I could describe the Get My Life tour in one word, it would be vulnerability. Showing up for yourself is so important. Welcome to the Get My Life tour. I'm your host, Lydia T. Blanco. Hey y'all, and welcome to the Get My Life tour. I'm your host, Lydia T. Blanco, and I am so excited for this stop on the tour. Let me tell you something. If this is your first time tuning in, I am so grateful to have you in this space and on tour with me because we have had an incredible journey thus far. I cannot believe this is already stop 11 on the tour, episode 11. And I have a very special guest with me today. So a conversation that started in Texas is now one that is being held here in New York. She is in Queens, from Queens, always repping Queens. And I am in Harlem holding down the fort. Without further ado, I have Miss Alyss Patterson, who is the creator of 131st, Hype Girl Threads, and the Introverted CEO. Alyss Patterson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lydia, for that introduction. I feel like a superstar. It's just little old me, but yes, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
You are a superstar. You most definitely are. So, in full disclosure, Alyss and I work together. I never tell people about my work, Alyss. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a journalist and all this other stuff, but we work together. We work hard together. Alyss is what would you say? Are you an events connoisseur? You're an events expert.
Yeah. I tell people that I'm an events and logistics specialist. I am an events professional.
Yes, you are.
So, that means if you have any, questions about how to run an event, what a successful event looks like, how you should start planning it, to me about that.
Most definitely. In your own words, because I called you a superstar already, people are like, okay, so if Lydia's saying she's a superstar, it must be true. And it is not only because I'm saying it, that is true, but it is. In your own words, tell us who Alyss is.
Oh, and it's so funny. This, interestingly enough, is probably one of the hardest questions for me to answer because I feel like I try so hard to be open-minded about, my experiences and letting them shape me and, taking parts of what I experience and having, being able to let that sort of define me and, pull out the parts of me that, I want to represent me outwardly. But, I guess at heart, I'm an around the way girl,
So Queen.
I'm from Queens.
So Queen.
I'm an around the way girl, which is interesting because what does that mean? Is it a hood chick? Is it, but to me, it's I'm the girl next door. I'm pretty much to myself, generally speaking, I have a really cool, strong sense of family. I keep a really tight circle. But I kind of see myself a little bit of Gina Waters with a little splash of Sinead Jenkins, just a little bit.
So hip hop too. So hip hop. You all, if you don't know this, okay. So I'm so excited. I'm talking over you, and I apologize. So okay. 131st. And Hype Girl Threads are both apparel companies. And they are both odes, to me at least, to hip hop and your love for hip hop. So tell me more about that as an entrepreneur. And then I'm going to tell people what we're going to be talking about because we're having so good of a time that I haven't even introduced the topic of discussion yet. But that's fine because my audience rocks with me and now they rock with you. So tell us more about 131st and Hype Girl Threads.
Yeah, so the street that I live on is 131st Street in Queens, and when I first decided to dabble in apparel design, I wanted it to speak really to people who are like me from communities like mine, which is, is varied. The type of person that lives in the neighborhood and, neighborhoods like it, to have different interests. They're not all the same, but the community, the neighborhood, which is sort of the online community that I'm trying to build around 131st, has we have, I want to say, there are certain things that speak to us all, even though we may be different. And a lot of that, those commonalities come from, living in an urban community, and in a lot of ways from hip hop and, rap culture. So the clothes sort of speaks to that. So you get a lot of, puns around hip hop and puns around, growing up in the neighborhood and things of that nature. So 131st is, more geared towards everybody, sort in that community, or who finds, commonalities with me and, 131st as a brand. And then Hype Girl Threads is sort of an offshoot of that, because it's really geared towards women who love hip hop. So those designs really speak more towards women and things that they would find interesting to wear and to express themselves as hip hop fans and lovers of hip hop music.
So let me tell you all a little story. Alyss and I were in North Carolina, and I met her sister-in-law for the first time. And I was like, how is it possible that y'all look like you all are sisters, right? And they look like salt and salt, not salt and pepper, right? Well, I was like, y'all are so hip-hop. It makes no sense, and I absolutely love it. Like, if any hip-hop icon were to see her and her sister-in-law, they would most definitely be like, okay, so what do you do and how can we do it together? That's how hip hop they are. But you know what? Enough about the hip hop, right?
Right.
Because you get me so excited. I'm like, okay, so should we talk about hip hop now? Okay, no, we're not. Even though I'm a rapper and my album comes out every June 33rd, you know what I'm saying? I got bars, hot fire. Right? When it comes to me, my rap career, I feel like Dylan from Making the Band. Like, who's your favorite rapper?
Lydia.
Exactly. Right. But you know what? I am so glad I have you here on the Get My Life tour, because we had a very real conversation, as I alluded to earlier, in Austin. And we were having breakfast after working hard, like we always do. And we started talking about life. And I was like, oh my goodness. And the conversation that we were having was about, womanhood and relationships, and what we thought, our relationships will look like, and that journey to partnership, really, right? And the insertion of, children who we may not bear from our own wombs. And you have an incredible story, an incredible journey. And that is why I had to have you here on the Get My Life tour, because there are so many women who listen to this podcast, men too. And we think that our lives are going to be one way because of how hard we work, the experiences we've had, how well we've listened and applied certain things to our lives, in hopes that relationally it would be what we want it to be, ideally, right? So based on that conversation, I learned that you have a bonus child, which is so dope to me. I think nowadays the perception around stepchildren and bonus children is a little bit more accepting, right? I think when people think about like this whole baby mama, baby daddy culture that was created in the early 90s, the kids who are born become some kind of issue to people, right? Like, oh, I don't want no man with a kid. And I know for so long, at least, I have been like, I'm really not interested in men with children because blah, 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 blah. And I remember in college and men had kids already. And it's like, dang, really? Okay, you was getting young. Okay, well, I see you. And now at 30, I'm like, it seems like most men come with children unless they're extremely ambitious and, are going for what they want, or they don't know what they want. So they're like, I don't think I want kids either. You're like, oh, damn.
Right.
But, oh my goodness, I'm excited to have this conversation. So, I have all these questions outlined for you. But, my first question I have, is, growing up, what was your idea of an ideal relationship?
So it's very interesting. I was kind of thinking through some of these questions. when I was younger, I didn't have that many model relationships to base my decisions, or at least strive, for. My parents were married up until I was about 9 or so, and then they separated. My father moved out, and my dad was. I'm an Army brat, so my dad was, all over. Not to say that he wasn't present in my life, but it wasn't like, we had family dinners, and they were married, but there was still a bit of distance. Even within that structure. I don't recall, I don't recall, family dinners and, having, conversations with both parents. And, I feel like I had time with my mom and time with my dad. And, my grandparents were together, but, my grandfather was sick, and my grandmother, he was in a home. So there was a lot of distance. I have tons of cousins and extended family, but again, there weren't many marriages. Like when I got married, I became like one of 3 of my whole family.
Wow.
So there weren't a lot of relationships that I would look at as model relationships. And, so much of my experience with, developing a relationship and communicating and all of those things were pretty much, trial and error, like, self-taught. And, my model relationships were probably like many other people, growing up when we did, the Huxtables and, Martin and Gina, even though that relationship was totally dysfunctional. But, those relationships you see on TV became more so like, what you expected to have, your relationship look like.
Yeah. So even though you didn't have any examples, well, you didn't have many examples, right, in the home, what was your ideal relationship? Like, if you could, like, I don't know if you had fairy tale, but what was it like that you were looking for?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I always wanted to, like, I never envisioned myself as somebody's wife. I always saw myself as a mom, and in relationships with, as far as like choosing a mate and what my life partner would be, I always wanted to be with someone who was really funny, someone who made me laugh, and like someone who had a good relationship with their mom and their families, because it to me was like an indicator of how they treat women. So there were things like that I thought would be key indicators for me as to whether or not this would be a good relationship to be in. But ideally, I guess I just wanted to be with somebody who made me feel secure, made me feel protected, and obviously loved. But I never really put standards or set real goals for my partner outside of those things. Like, I want him to treat me like this, or I want him to be able to be able to laugh at a lot of things and together, and have things in common. But I never, my relationship, I never spent a lot of time idealizing a relationship. I kind of more go with the flow.
Okay, so with that being said, did you have a list at all? Like, have you ever created a list of like attributions? Like, a lot of women have been telling me, like, Lydia, I know you out here talking about where he at though, but do you like? And I'm praying for my husband, my partner, and I have honestly created a list. I feel like at one point in college I had some kind of list, but it really was like, "Who, Lydia, sit down. Who are you?" Okay, so I was getting my life then as well. But I now have like a real list of who I would like for my husband to be, and I pray over that. Did you have that experience at all, or any shape or form of that?
Not before. So before my husband and I started dating, I was in a very long term relationship. And it wasn't really until after that relationship ended when I really started to think about what the qualities of my husband needed to be. And I think it's because prior to that, I grew up, my family, or the people that I spent most of my time with, I want to say 80 95% men of all different shapes and sizes, like personalities, etc. And being in a part of a household like that, or a part of a family unit like that, I've always found myself kind of, adjusting and adapting. And a lot in my previous relationship, it was that too. Like, I feel like as part of making, men feel comfortable with who they are, for me, it meant like adjusting in a way that helped them, feel strong and valuable. And I think because of the way that I manage relationships, a lot of my prior relationships prior to this one, there was a lot of giving on my part. So like, if there was something about you that I liked and something about you that spoke to me, I held on to that. And then it was a lot of, becoming what I needed to be in the relationship,
Wow.
in order to be in the relationship.
Wait. We're not going to just glance over that. You know what? So many things take form relationally based on how we think we need to shape ourselves. Yes. And that may not be the best thing for us individually.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. So you identified that, right? Was that something that you realized was like a part of your strategy, or were you just doing that subconsciously, given like you said, the men who you were raised around? Like, where did that come from? And like, how did that, oh my goodness, how did that hurt or help you along the way?
So I would say, right now, the way I look at it is not so much as a hurt or help. Like, I just feel like, along this journey of life, there aren't any real wrong turns. You just learn from everything that you do. I think that, looking back on it, it was definitely subconscious. Like, I didn't make the decision to sort of be whatever you needed me to be, but I feel like it's in my nature to want to help people in general, and especially with the people that I love, people that I'm in relationships with. So and very rarely, in our community especially, you have men that are whole. They come and they have whatever the issue may be, they bring that with them into the relationship. And me acknowledging that, especially, the variety of issues that I've seen in my family and within my friend circle, I feel like I identify with the men that I'm in relationships with, identify their issues and want to help make them whole. And what that meant for me was that I had to, or at least that I wanted to, be what they needed to be, more so than be what I am. And in the relationship, that helped. That was helpful because they were supported and they felt, they felt like they could be open and communicative, and all of that is good. But for me, it left me not really knowing who I am truly. And then 2, becoming second. And being second for the relationship, because it's kind of the place that I put myself in. So now whatever my needs are inevitably take a back seat. And I'm just sort of existing in the relationship as, something that we sort of get to once we're done, the work with him. And it also, so I guess, it was helpful in learning, I guess, what I need, what my partner needed to make the relationship work. And it helped me, I feel like, learn a lot about men as I would move, from maybe relationship to relationship. But as far as, me feeling, like I'm getting what I need out of a relationship, even as far as identifying that, that didn't come until way later in life.
I have to ask, what did you learn by putting yourself second?
Well, I learned that I can accept a lot of things, whether that be good or bad. I feel like I'm getting a little emotional. I guess I learned how to survive with the bare minimum, emotionally anyway. Like, I learned how to just push through, and I guess be
I'm sending you so much love right now, Alyss. I am. I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I could just rub your back. It's okay. You got this, sis.
it. I don't know. I guess in my longest relationship, I felt like once it ended, I think I realized that I wasn't whole, that I didn't know who I was. So while I realized that I can give a lot of myself, and I could be very supportive, and I can certainly do the emotional work of in a relationship, as far as like listening and being, a good partner. At least what I understood it to be then. I learned that, you can't be in a healthy relationship without giving, 100% of your true self. However, difficult that might be.
That's the word, and I feel like some things just cost us so much. The emotional tax of putting yourself second is so high, right? You are incredible. Thank you so
Oh man.
much for just being as, vulnerable and transparent as you are. It sounds like you learned so much from that relationship, and in letting go, you were able to receive what was truly designed for you. Mm-hmm. After doing, your work, how did you go about looking for the one? And did you at any point discover the one that you were looking for was yourself?
So, after my, that one long-term relationship I ended, I actually I had no intentions on looking for anything. The point when I realized that I wasn't 100% sure, who I was, who I wanted to be, was, right at the end or towards the end of that relationship. And that was right, when things sort of, fell apart. And trying to understand who I was and what I really wanted, I did a lot of sort of soul searching. And that, the idea that you can't, you got to know yourself, but you got to be alone and learn who you are before you try to, come into a relationship. That is 100% true, because you have to understand what it is you're bringing to the table, what you need, how to be happy by yourself. Like, all of those things actually matter, because you cannot, you have to bring your whole self into a relationship. You can't be confused about what you want or who you are, and what you need. So for me, it was more about doing that work and finding out, understanding who I am, mm-hmm. what I wanted to be, what I needed, to be who I wanted, who I was going to ultimately be in this world and in a relationship. And so it wasn't about, I feel like my husband and I, we kind of happened to each other. I wasn't looking for him. He wasn't looking for me. We just kind of, the stars sort of aligned. And it wasn't as if I, sort of, this relationship ended and I had to create, I have a goal of, having a husband and this is what I need. For me, it was just, I'm going to live my life, and, whether or not I find a husband, which wasn't a goal, honestly. Dating wasn't even a goal at the time. I was just, trying to put the pieces of myself in place. But, if I will say there was one thing that I know that I needed, was for him to be willing to hear me, to be willing to listen to me and hear me and understand me, because I spent a lot of time not being heard and understood. so I needed, if anything, someone who was interested in exploring, who I was and helping who I wanted to be manifest.
My goodness, the stars aligned. You did your work, so that you could prepare yourself for, what it was you didn't even realize you desired outside of that understanding and being heard, right? But how did you meet your husband?
So my husband and I actually met in 2006. We both worked for a company that had a training class that we both sat in. So while we weren't colleagues and that we saw each other every day, we worked for the same company and we met at that training. So we met way back then, and we were just friends for a really long time, distant friends at that, over the years. But to fast forward to 2014 when we started dating, it was kind of just time and place. I had, my relationship had ended, and his father was ill. And he wanted to put together like a fundraising event for him. And he knew that I had some event planning experience. So he reached out to me to help with that. And that's how we sort of like reconnected.
Look at your gifts making room for you. Okay, look, let me find out my husband is someone I need to write a story about. Okay. That is so dope. So like God really put y'all in the same room. And what is that? Let me see if I can do math. 8 years later, 2006 to 2014, 8 years later, it happened. Yeah. What do they say? Great things take time?
Yeah, man.
My goodness.
That is right.
What was that 8-year stint like, right? Just meeting them in 2006, and then all these years of, touch and go, and then boom, here it is, 2014, you're dating. I want to know what that's like. Give me the tea. Come on.
Yeah, so it's interesting because to tell the story the way, we met in my training class. The seat next to him was the only available seat. I was late. I pulled up all late. He's in there. The only free seat in the class is next to him. So I sit next to him, and I'm in a relationship at the time. And he's cool. He's attractive, but we're not even, it's not that kind of party. So I didn't want to talk to him. He was very loud. I'm very quiet. I was so not into him at all at the time. But over the training, the course of the training, we got to be friendly, me, him, and another group of people, a small group of people in the class. And when I left that job, I sent this whole long email to everybody, the audacity to me, like this whole buck the system email. Hey. I don't need to be here. You can do better. Like, I did the most on my way out. And in that email, I connected with him and the other people in our friend group, and we sort of stayed connected via email over the years. So it was really little stuff like happy birthday, hope things are going well, and where you working at now. So it was just, little pleasant emails over the years, sometimes text messages just to check in on everybody, see how we were doing. But it wasn't, it was very far but spread out. Like, it'd be 2 months, 2 years before we'd send an email to one another.
Oh,
then we have a quick, so yeah, he obviously was in relationships and we were all just doing our thing. Like, it wasn't on the agenda for us to speak, for us to date. Every now and again, he'd send like little hints that he may be interested, but they never, never manifested into anything. But we were just kind of like distant friends over the years. Yeah.
And then in 2014, the stars aligned. Tell us more.
Yeah, he's shy. And I was, my husband is so interesting, ladies. Let's talk about these lists, right?
Oh, yes.
So my husband, if I had to pick a guy, my ideal was would have been somebody like the men that I'm, spending all of my time with, so I'm from Queens, Jamaica, and all the, if you know anything about Jamaica Queens, you know what those guys are kind of like. You got your, your champion hoodies and your Timbs, and I'm looking at I'm spending most of my time with the guys that are a lot like, Method Man, more so.
Oh, he's so fine. Oh my gosh.
Not Andre 3000, you know what I mean? It's just like, there's not a lot of those over here. And, so I'm looking to say all that to say, like, I'm looking for a guy that's like, hood guy. He's smart. I want him to be smart. I do want him to have a job, but for the most part, he looks a certain way. He acts a certain way. And that's just what I can relate to. That's what I grew up around. My husband is such a nerd. Like, he is such a nerd. He is from Long Island.
Oh, wow. He's a real nerd. No.
Yeah. He is from Long Island. He is, not in, we have obviously common, similarities in our relationship and in our personalities, but he is very different from anything that I've ever wanted to date. He was a football star. I said I'd never date an athlete because they're so, full of themselves. And he's just not what I would have wanted. But anyway, we in 2014, when we connected to do his father's fundraiser, he kind of, asked me on a date, and we were like, I'm like, what, you're not really what I'm usually trying to do, but whatever, what I'm usually trying to do ain't been working. So let me do something different. So he asked me out on a date, and we did spend a lot of time together just planning a fundraiser. As you know, Lydia, putting events together is very time consuming, especially when it gets down to the wire. Like, I'm spending more time with him than I am with, folks in my family and living in my house. So we just ended up spending a lot of time together, and some of those commonalities sort of, became very obvious, and we had a lot of time to learn about each other and, sort of to get to like each other. And I saw that sort of developing into those feelings sort of developing. So I just allowed myself to, let it happen and see where it went.
You let it happen, and you all got to know one another. And one of the things you learned about him was that he had a child.
Yes.
Right? What was your natural reaction when you learned that he was a father? And can you tell us more about what it was that you desired from a man? Like, did you want your guy to be child free? Was like that a non-negotiable at first, or were you more okay with that? How did that work?
So I actually found out that he had a child about maybe a year before we started dating, because, it's social media, and we were associated through Instagram. And I did see that he had a kid, and at the time, it didn't mean anything to me. We weren't dating, we weren't in a relationship, but it was, I was like, oh, okay, he has a kid. That's interesting. But as I started considering him as a partner, it did give me pause, because the one thing I never wanted to do was to get into a relationship with a man who had a child. And it's just, I've never seen an instance of that in my life that was good. It was always turbulent, like you mentioned earlier, there's the baby mama drama, and, people fighting over the kids. And, I'm very, I'm the only girl. My father, I have a brother, and it's me and my dad, and, I'm a daddy's girl, and I've been, with him as he started dating. And, I was trouble for these women. Like, I'm just gonna put it out there. Like,
I can see that though. You are like a tough cookie for real.
Yeah, I was, it was not, I did not make it easy. And I couldn't imagine someone, a child in the equation, making it difficult for me. And especially, to be quite honest, after my long-term relationship failed, and it being partly because of my not feeling, valued and important, and number, feeling like I was, let's say, number one, for example. It was scary to get into a relationship with a man that had a child, because I felt like there was no way I could be. And it was a lot of what I needed at that time. And it wasn't necessarily something that was going to be forever. Like, I eternally need to feel like I'm the most important thing in your life. But coming out of the relationship that I came out of, it was what I needed at that time. And for me, it was like, there's no way that he can give me that when he has a child, because this person has to be number one always. So it did give me great pause to find out, to know that he had a kid and that he wanted to, develop a relationship with me, because I didn't understand where that was going to put me and what that would look like.
That is so real. That is such a huge reservation for so many women. Yeah. Thinking about sitcoms, I remember vividly watching The Game and what it was like when Melanie was in a relationship with Derwin, whatever his name was.
Derwin.
Yes, Derwin at the time. And he had a child while they weren't together, or he had a baby on her, something like that. And it was wild. And I just remember as like a teenage girl, what that would feel like as an adult woman. I was like, oh my gosh, see, that's one of the reasons why I would never, right? Little grown Lydia, right? But I most definitely still have those kinds of reservations. I'm just like, I do want to be first. And I think it's because of the way that I've been so strategic in my dealings with men. I'm like, so if we not and this and that, then right? But that's a very real thing. I mean, I too was someone's stepdaughter. Really, but not really, but really, but not really. It wasn't like the most copacetic relationship. So I'm like, was I really a stepchild or not? But I remember meeting this woman for the first time, and we got hit with a lot of news at one time, just given, how some parents do. And I was just like, I ain't really feeling this. And I remember just not being too keen to the situation. And I know how I am. I'm very complex at times. Some people will just call me difficult. I agree with that. But I feel it. It's just like, and with little girls especially, there is something about little girls. Like, I feel like, boys are a little bit more passive and this and that. But there is something innate within us, no matter how old we are, to kind of challenge. Challenge women. And I feel like little girls really, I don't know what it is in little girls, but they love challenging older women. It's kind of like, we finna, boss up. Let's see what's up. But I could only imagine, so as you began to date, your husband, then boyfriend at the time, and, his child was also, of course, in the picture. What was that like? And how did, that really shape you relationally?
So for me, I wanted to be, well, let me just first say, like, I do have a stepmother. Like, I am a stepchild. And I think a lot of how I navigated the relationship came from me sort of watching how my stepmother managed my relationship with her. So a lot of it was just how I handle people in general, especially in situations where I feel like we, is to some degree competitive. Not that I know a 2-year-old is competing against me or vice versa, but in some instances we're both sort of vying for the attention of the same man, and we have to. For me, I wanted to always understand and be respectful of the fact that before she was here before me, and she has a relationship that's very different than mine. And I wanted to be respectful of that and understanding of that, and give her her dad when she wanted her dad. Like, I don't want to be this person in the relationship that's now taking him away from her. And so whenever we would spend time with my stepdaughter, I would always make sure that everything was the same for her. Like, if I spend the night with him and she normally sleeps with him, she's going to sleep with him still, and I wanted everything to be normal for her. Like, I didn't want her to end up feeling displaced in a relationship. And that was really important for me. Even though, yes, I want to be with him and I want to spend time with him, like, I wanted to make it very clear that I'm here, but you're still the same. Everything is going to be the same for you. You're still his daughter. You're still, he still loves you. I didn't want her to feel, because I feel like that's where some of the animosity and stuff starts to breed itself. Like when I come in and now things have to change for you, like I'm taking up the spot that used to be for yours, and now you don't like me. Now we're having issues with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was strategic, and part of the strategy, I guess, was to try and, keep and make her feel comfortable, that things will be the same, for her. And then part of the work, I felt like a lot of it anyway was on her father's side. Mm-hmm. Because I felt like it's up to the father, in the relationship, or the boyfriend or whatever in the relationship, to create that balance. Because I can only, like, I'm coming into this relationship and I can control how I manage you and how you manage her, but I can't control how he makes me feel. Like, and he needed to be able to, bring me into this relationship and make me feel important and make me feel like, I'm number one. And at the same time, make his daughter feel like she's valued and important. And I guess also number one, and find a place and find a way to do that, to try to make us both happy. And it was more juggling on his part than mine. Mine was more, my feeling was that I just needed to make sure that, I'm not giving this child reasons to feel unimportant and left out and distant, like her life is changing. Like that's all I wanted to do. And I didn't want to, be a second mom to her. Like I wanted to, let her know that I was her friend, and, I'm building this relationship with her father the same way I'm building a relationship with her. So I didn't approach it as if I was trying to, I'm a bonus mom or I'm mom number two or anything of that nature. Like going into it, it was just, I'm your friend Alyss, and I'm dating your dad.
Wow. That is so mature of you.
Mm.
Y'all, Alyss is not 80 years old. And when, you connect with her online after listening to this, you most definitely will see her. She's bad and bougie. And, but she is a millennial young woman. Mm-hmm. She is a professional. She is very beautiful, smart, intelligent.
Thank you.
And I mean, if I was her bonus child, her stepchild, I'd be bragging, right? And it is really so, I'm lost for words, right? Just listening to you speak about the relationship with him and his daughter, your daughter, the way you do, because as millennials, we grew up in the baby mama, baby daddy era for real. Yes. Like that was birthed when we were children, and never before the 90s was anyone referred to as a baby mama or a baby daddy. I still remember that song, Call My Mama, Call You. That stupid song changed. That really took a toll on the Black community in the way that we perceive one another, the way that we engage with one another, and just so many different things at so many different levels, right? So to hear a woman of your caliber speak so highly about how you were able to navigate the relationship with both him and now both of you all's daughter is so beautiful. I don't think that a lot of women go into relationships, or men go into relationships, with that level of thinking. It's always like the natural, I'm not finna deal with this with nobody's baby mama, nobody's baby daddy. And I'm like, okay, so who are you in a relationship with? Is it the parent that you are in a relationship with, or is it the mother or father of the child who you aren't in a relationship with? I don't know how comfortable you feel, commenting on that, but if at all, without, we know, right?
Right.
I'm like trying to be as careful as possible here. My listeners are probably like, just ask, dang. But how have you been able to navigate that and stay on course in your relationship?
So people who share the same position in life that I'm in, the bonus mom, stepmom, etc., may feel very, I feel like it's polarized around this issue about how you should interact with the other parent. My I can't even, I don't even want to say that this has been my approach, because I I don't feel like I've had much of a choice in the matter. But where my daughter's mother, sounds crazy to say, my stepdaughter,
it is what it is.
Stepdaughter, just to make it clear, just like your daughter's mom, just hold up. But no, my stepdaughter's mother, and I don't really interact with each other at all. And I don't know if it's good or bad, for our relationship, because there are times when I feel like, there are instances where I feel like it would be good if we were speaking, if we spoke at all, because it would help resolve this issue quicker. Or, it's probably good that we don't talk because, it's my husband is sort of the go-between, and, maybe that's how it should be. But she and I, we've met, formally, we met for the first time at my daughter at her birthday party, I think when she turned maybe 5. And that was 2 years into my relationship. So we didn't, I don't know if there was just a general lack of urgency around meeting her. For me, I think I would probably want to meet the person that would be spending so much time with my kid sooner. But, everybody has their reasons for the things that they do. But no one, I guess, felt like it was urgent for that to happen. So we met relatively, for me, relatively late in our relationship. And we only speak when we see each other, so if during my stepdaughter has a dance recital or graduation or whatever, we will see each other and it's cordial. And we don't, but other than that, we don't speak. If I need, if there's a question that I have for her, which is very rare, like, is it okay for me to braid, my stepdaughter's hair, things like that, that my husband, manages those messages. Like, I do have her number. I don't use it. We're not connected on social. We have very, very, very little interaction with one another. And, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some issues that occasionally arise. But it's largely around, things that are, I'm trying to be like PC. We don't have a lot of issues or any really that relates, to Journey. That's my stepdaughter's name. Directly. We just, my husband pretty much does all the communicating with her, and we're over here.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. I'm sure me saying that's beautiful is easier than what it is at times, but I say that out of respect to your relationship and the secrecy of that with your husband and your stepdaughter, and of course the form of relationship that you are in, even though you're not in relationship with her mother. Peace and respect are so important. Yeah. I could imagine, especially when dealing with someone else, right? Yeah. You are wife, and your stepdaughter is daughter, and your husband is husband. So that's it. But I want to know, how has having, this young lady, this little girl in your life blessed you and in your relationship?
I will say this, interestingly enough, because while I never wanted to be in a relationship with a guy who had a daughter, I will say that him having her, and seeing him with her is one of the reasons one of the things that kept us together. It's what made him really, it's what made me realize that he was capable of being what I needed him to be. Interestingly, because I could see, the compassion, his emotional intelligence, when he, the way he interacts with her. He's so vulnerable and so present, and so attentive to her needs. It was being able to see him in that space made me realize that he could be the things that I needed him to be. Like, it's one thing when you're, someone is saying like, I'm able to be, like, I can be those things, and you never have to, you haven't gotten to a point where they have to show you that, so you don't really know for sure. But seeing him with her helped me to sort of check off those boxes. And she's a phenomenal kid. She's just really a great kid, and having her around and sort of being able to see her interact with her father, having her with me, and watching me, and asking me questions, it's helped me sort of understand the role that I would play in a child's life. Like, it helps me to understand, like, how what I do shapes who they are, how it influences them, so I feel like it makes me, having her around has made me, it's forced me to do more of the things that I want to do, and be more of the person who I want to be, because, you feel like I have this person watching me, so I can't talk about being strong and not be strong. I can't talk about being confident and not be confident, because kids, they're watching, and they're gonna call you on it. Like, they're gonna, you can't. So you gotta practice what you preach around kids, and more so, it's important for them to see, you do a thing that you want them to do, rather than to hear you say it. So having her around, it's for me, it's helped me mature as a woman. I feel like it's helped me prepare for, having a child, and, what I want that child to be, and, how I want my relationship with that child to be. So it's just helped me in a lot of ways become more mature and a better woman.
I love that. And, I have to ask, as a woman, how has the experience of following your heart and going for, what you desire, despite it not being ideal, shaped you?
Oh, I feel like I've just learned that you think you know what's good for you. But you don't always. Like, and for me, it's instead of, like, go for what you know, it's more like go for what you feel, because this situation has not in any way, been, it has not mirrored, or looked at all like I would have thought my relationship and my life would look like. But it has been an absolute blessing. Like, and it's all because, I just went with what felt right. And, to some extent, I think it's important not to compromise, but you got to make sure that the things that you're not willing to compromise on are things that are worth holding as stringently to. So, because, don't compromise on how someone makes you feel, right? But maybe compromise a little bit on how much, what he does for a living. Is that really important? Like, the things that are non-negotiables should really be things that matter a lot in the end. And not, not so much just our ideals for you. Because, I always when I think of my relationship, I think of that Lauryn Hill, what you want might make you cry, but what you need might pass you by. And what you need, ironically, will turn out what you want it to be if you just let it. Like, that's how I feel about my relationship, because it's so much of what I needed, but it's very little of what I thought I wanted. And it turns out to be exactly, both what I want and need, because I let it grow. I let it manifest.
Honey, okay, let me tell you something. You are not going to read out the book of Lauryn Hill this afternoon and then just drop these gems. It is, my mind is blown. I think that, I'll speak for myself, okay? I'm not going to speak for anyone else. When I look back on the decisions I've made and the decisions I did not make relationally and where I am not disgruntled at all, but I wish that I would have heard you say that years ago. Maybe when I was in college. I remember so many people, mentors especially, saying like, so are you working on the relationship part? You always doing some personal or professional development. Are you thinking about the relationship? So what do you want? And X, Y, and Z. And they sounded like recorders. And I'm using a sarcastic tone because I didn't value that in, my earlier years, like my early 20s. I was just like, I need to be so focused on X, Y, and Z because I know what I don't want. I don't want it to this, that, and blah, 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 blah. And I spent so much time, focusing on what I didn't want, that I wasn't open to what could have possibly been, if not right in front of me, around me. So you saying that right now, it just checks my heart posture, because I'm just like, wait, okay, I Lauryn Hill said that. I mean, maybe I did because I probably sang it, but I wasn't thinking about it. Okay, look, when I told you that Alyss is so hip hop, it just makes no sense. Like, clearly. Oh my gosh. I need to stop being so trap music sometimes and just actually listen to the words clearly, because it'll change my life. You and Lauryn Hill right now, okay? Welcome to the Get My Life tour, clearly. With all of that being said, what advice do you have for women who might have a list, right, and find love that doesn't necessarily meet their criteria?
I'm not one to, for advising women not to, set goals for themselves and to, stray, off those, veer away from those plans. But I will say this from my personal experience. You gotta know, be very clear about who you are and what you're bringing to the table, and what the characteristics that you have for your mate, your soulmate, on that list, how well they speak to who you are, and what you actually need. Because if those things that you're looking for are based on ideals, you need to be sure that, in addition to being ideal, that they're realistic. Like, you want to make sure that you're not so hell bent on finding, checking all these boxes, that you're missing the critical pieces and the critical parts of a relationship, or a mate, the critical aspects of that person that are going to speak to you and that are going to help flourish, help your relationship flourish. And also realize that you're evolving. Like, all of your relationships in life, romantic and otherwise, are affecting you, and you're changing. So how often do you revisit that list? Like, are you updating it? Like, are you flexible in any way? Like, you want to just make sure, by all means, have your goal, have the things that are absolutely critical for your man to be and achieve, but then also, reflect on, what that means to you, and how it's going to impact your relationship if maybe they don't have, these key elements. And, be open to something different. Be open to writing new things on your list. Be open to taking some off, because, nobody's perfect, but it's not to say that your relationship can't be, and it takes work. So you guys are going to grow together. And maybe if there's things on the list that he doesn't have, you can help him achieve those things. So maybe he doesn't earn what you want him to earn, or maybe, you know, he's not, you know, as smart as you would like him to be. But those are things that you all can grow to together. Like, so many women are looking for a complete they want, and like, granted, you should know who you are and be solid in that, but there's nothing wrong with growing together. In fact, you should want to. There are things that, you know, my husband was lacking in coming into the relationship, but we can build those things together. And be open to that, you know. So by all means, have a list, but let that be just, you know, for reference.
That's
and not
good.
necessarily the Bible.
That is so good. Okay. What was the most rewarding experience you've had? Or can you think of like something that was unimaginable for you, but you've been able to experience because you went for it?
Again, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't spend a lot of time as a young girl envisioning, you know, being married, my wedding. Like, when I got married and when I was planning my wedding and got married, like, that whole time in my life was just like a period of discovery. Like, I never thought about a dress or a venue or none of that. Like, it was never part of, you know, my life as a kid. It just didn't spend a lot of time envisioning myself doing all that. And, you know, to now being a wife and being married and experiencing that relationship, it's just, to me, has been one of the most life-changing, you know, things that I've ever been a part of. Like, it's just changed it. You know, a lot of people say a marriage is just, it's a piece of paper, it's just vows and all these things, but it really, for me, has changed the way my relationship exists. Like, I feel like, you know, we're so much more of a team. We're so much more, and even though, again, it is, you know, we could separate and get divorced at any time, but, you know, it changes the mindset of the relationship. Because for me, it feels like forever. So we're way more willing to talk about things. We're always looking for the resolution of some issue, because, you know, when you're thinking about it as a forever thing, there's no room for not getting to a point of closure, not finding common ground. Like, everything is a we thing. You know, it's about working together. It's about longevity. So it changed the structure of our relationship in a way where, you know, it's the ultimate security for me in the relationship, because I feel like you've committed to me in a way that no other person has committed to me, and now I feel secure. Now I can let everything go, and I can rely on you in a way that I've never relied on anyone else. I can be vulnerable in a way that I've never been vulnerable, and I know that I'm supported in a way that I've never been supported. And it truly made us unified in a way that I feel like I've never experienced. So being married for me is just been the most amazing experience I've had in a relationship, and it's definitely changed my life and how I look at you know relationships, and, you know, communication and within relationships, and, you know, the responsibilities of, you know, each individual in a relationship. So
That is so dope. And how long have you been married? How many years has it been?
A very, very long 1 year. No, I'm joking. It's been, we married in 2017, November. So we're coming up on 2 years.
Yes. Okay. Happy anniversary in advance.
Yeah, thank you.
And I can't help but to think about a conversation that a couple was having. It was a Black couple, a celebrity couple. I can't remember who it was, but I believe it was during like a feature on Black Love doc. But the person was talking about the process of being in love. Mm-hmm. And they talked about it, you know, as it relates to just being a journey. Like, when you're in love, so many things happen. So you don't just say, oh, I love you, and that's it. When you're in love, it's like this beautiful journey of ups and downs and trial and tribulation, falling in love over and over and over again. I am so excited for you. 2 years and look at you
Thank
out
you.
here dropping major gems, out here helping other people get their lives and change their perspective on how they may see something relationally. You most definitely have challenged me to think about what it is that I say I want, what it is that I'm prepared for, and what it is that I need. Because I feel like we go into so much with just rose glasses on. And we're like, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, or I'm not dealing with this or that. And it's like, if you just open yourself to experiencing what it is that you aren't certain about, or just the unknown in general, there may be something that is there designed just for you. And I'm so excited that this relationship is designed just for you. Like, you are married, you are in love, you are a mother, and you went for it. Look, Alyss, I'm over here smiling ear to ear. Okay, so every stop on the tour, we have a mic drop moment. And I have to ask you, and you can think about it for a second, but given the nature of everything we talked about, what is your mic drop moment on this stop of the tour?
Trust your heart. Trust your heart and lead with love, and you will not fail.
I love asking people what their mic drop moment is because, and I know you're not really supposed to talk after a mic drop moment, but it's a podcast, so I'm gonna just do what I want because it's mine. But some people don't lead with love.
Right.
And let me tell you, baby girl, people don't love themselves, so it's hard for them to lead with love. It's like you just, beyond going to, spaces looking for love in the wrong places and all that other jazz that's like so poetic and melodic. Like, if you don't love yourself, there's no way that you can lead with love. You can always be in search of it, but if you don't love yourself, it's kind of impossible to do that. So that is perfect that you dropped the mic that way. We've spoken about so much. We went from hip hop and your journey as an entrepreneur to the process of you getting back to who you are. Your journey in your relationship before, the stars aligned and you met who would become your husband, even though you didn't think of him that way, right? And your bonus daughter, your stepdaughter, and how that shaped you relationally, and just your journey as a woman. You have shared so much, and I just want to thank you so much for being so transparent and being so willing to help us as we get our lives. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been a terrific experience, and I really do appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Now, there are going to be people who want to check out both of your brands, following you on Instagram, purchase, some apparel. Tell people how they can get connected with you.
Yeah, so my apparel, the Instagram is 1.30.first. That's 131st. And Hype Girl Threads on Instagram. And I am at Lyssy for real, Lyssy for real. And that's where you can find me on Instagram. And links to websites are all available there.
Awesome. Y'all, when I tell you, when you connect with her, you most definitely are going to get your life. You know how to connect with me at Lydia T Blanco at the Get My Life Tour on all social platforms. Be sure to join our Facebook community, the Get My Life Tour Backstage. That's where we huddle. We get our lives as we prepare for, that moment where we take center stage. Alyss, I am so glad that you showed up for this stop on the tour, that you took center stage, and that so many people are going to hear from you. Shout outs to our international audience, a little toot to my horn there.
Hey.
But I'm so glad that they are going to hear from you. And once you listen to this episode with Alyss, be sure to connect with us and engage with us. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know what you took away. She dropped the mic. She dropped so many gems. And you know what? This has been incredible. So thank you again. And I cannot wait to just like run up to you and hug you until you're like, get off me. Because this was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Get My Life Tour. It has been real. And I will see you on the next stop. Peace.